Camila Duarte sat on the marble floor surrounded by boxes that no longer belonged to her. Her breathing trembled. The house she had designed with her own hands, the one that once smelled of fresh flowers and coffee, now smelled of goodbye. The echo of the slammed door still vibrated in her ears, and on the table, the red invitation lay open like a wound that refused to close. In golden letters it read, Andrés Salvatierra and Lucia Ferrer celebrate their wedding this Saturday at Hacienda El Horizonte. Camila's heart beat slowly, as if it refused to keep going. Camila's had not only left her, he had taken away what she loved most. Her home, her project, her pride. He had turned 3 years of love into a mere transaction. A tear slid down her cheek and landed right on the invitation. The ink bled a little, leaving a soft pink stain, absurd, almost poetic. Camila Duarte was 32 years old, an interior architect, lover of harmony, natural light, and detail. Since childhood, she had dreamed of building homes full of life. And in Andrés, she thought she had found the perfect foundation. She met him at an art exhibition in Madrid. He introduced himself with a charming smile, a white shirt, and confident eyes. He had that kind of charisma that filled a room. A successful audiovisual entrepreneur, ambitious, with sweet words and gentlemanly gestures. During the first months, everything was a romantic movie. Dinners in restaurants where candles seemed to glow only for them, spontaneous trips to the coast, nights where Andrés read her pieces of novels while she drew sketches. Camila believed it was the mature love she had always waited for. Her mother, Beatriz Duarte, watched from afar with a mix of tenderness and caution. Beatriz was a woman around 60. Elegant even in simplicity. She had raised Camila alone after becoming a widow. No one truly knew her past. Her eyes were deep, almost reading minds, and she carried that calmness that could comfort or intimidate. When she met Andrés, she simply said, "That man's smile is too rehearsed." Camila laughed then, unaware of how true that warning was. The first year of marriage was perfect, or so it seemed. Camila and Andrés bought land on the outskirts of Madrid, surrounded by vineyards and cypress trees, where she dreamed of building a house that reflected their love. Beatriz, proud, decided to help financially. She sold an old family property and gave them a large sum. "My wedding gift," she said. "Build something that lasts forever." Camila poured her soul into every corner. She designed open walls, windows that caught the sunrise, a kitchen where she imagined cooking with Andrés on Sundays. She got her hands dirty, checked plans, corrected workers, and dreamed awake. But once the house was finished, Andrés changed. Suddenly he had no time for her. He came home late, smelled of perfumes that weren't hers. He whispered on phone calls, kept his phone locked. Camila tried to ignore it, convincing herself it was work stress. Sometimes she watched him sleep and told herself she still loved him, but that love had become a shattered mirror. One night at dinner, Andrés put down his fork and looked at her with a troubled face. "Camila," he said with a sigh, "I need to talk to you." She froze. "What's wrong?" "My company is going through a bad time. A partner betrayed us. We lost contracts. If we don't get an urgent loan, everything will fall apart." "How can I help?" she asked, driven by her instinct to protect. He took her hand. "The house. If we put it under my name, I can use it as collateral. It'll just be temporary. Once it's solved, we switch it back." Camila hesitated, but Andrés cried. He cried like a child, and seeing him so fragile, so human, she gave in. "All right," she whispered. "I trust you." The next day she signed the papers without reading them carefully. He was her husband, her partner, her love. She didn't need lawyers between them. 2 weeks passed. Andrés seemed calmer, even attentive. He brought her flowers. Camila thought the storm had passed, until one afternoon, when she came home from a meeting, and found the door locked. The security guard, who always greeted her warmly, avoided her gaze. "Mesa, I'm sorry. Mr. Salvatierra left instructions." Mr. Salvatierra left instructions. "Instructions? What do you mean?" she asked, confused. The man handed her a red envelope. Camila opened it. Inside was a card and a photograph. The same red invitation. "We cordially invite you to our wedding. Andrés and Lucia." Lucia Ferrer. Andrés' assistant, the one who always pretended respect and texted him at midnight for work reasons. Camila froze. She ran up the stairs and banged on the door, shouting his name. Andrés appeared, impeccable, a glass of whiskey in hand. "What is this, Andrés?" "It's what you read," I sets me getting married. What? But what about us? What about the house? The house is in my name. You have nothing here. I don't sit want drama, Camila. She looked at him like he was a stranger. Nothing? Nothing, he repeated coldly. Take your things and leave. Oh, and if you have any dignity left, come to the wedding. It suts this Saturday. You shall see what real happiness looks like. The door closed slowly before her. Camila didn't feel her body as she walked down the stairs. Her life collapsed in silence, like a glass falling to the floor but never breaking completely. That night she walked through the rain with an old suitcase and soaked clothes. No one would have recognized her, makeup ruined, hair plastered to her face, eyes empty. When she reached her mother's house, she could barely knock. Beatriz opened the door, unsurprised, as if she had been expecting her. My child, she said, holding her by the shoulders. Camila broke into tears. Mom, he took everything. The house, my dreams, everything. He left me with nothing. Beatriz led her inside, sat her by the fire, and wrapped her in a blanket. She didn't speak until the crying stopped. Nothing, you say? She asked softly but firmly. Camila nodded. Beatriz smiled with a calm that unsettled her daughter. It was a serene, almost amused smile. Then she said slowly, Don't that cry anymore. You said going to that wedding, my daughter, and you said go looking radiant. Camila looked at her, confused, through tears. What are you saying, Mom? Beatriz smoothed her hair gently and looked into her eyes full of secrets. Because this, my dear, isn't set the end. It sets only the beginning. The rain drummed against the windows, and for the first time amid the pain, Camila felt something new. Not yet hope, but a spark. The spark of a story that was far from over. Camila had not slept all night. The fire in the fireplace had gone out hours ago, yet she remained on the sofa wrapped in a blanket, staring at the dim glow of the embers. Her mother's words echoed endlessly in her mind, impossible to silence. You're going to that wedding, and you'll go looking beautiful. She couldn't understand how Beatriz could appear so calm, so serene. After what had happened, Camila had lost everything, yet her mother behaved as if she had just won a battle. At dawn, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the house. Camila stood up slowly, her eyes swollen, her throat dry. Beatriz was in the kitchen, wearing her gray robe, hair neatly tied back, her expression composed as always. She poured coffee into 2 fine porcelain cups, the ones she only brought out for special occasions. Sit down, daughter, she said in her steady tone. We have much to discuss. Camila sat down, too drained to argue. Mom, how can you be so calm? She asked softly. He took everything from me. I have no home, no money, no marriage. Beatriz looked up, her gaze mixing compassion with a quiet pride. He didn't stake everything, Camila. He only took an illusion, and believe me, that sip's not the same. Camila frowned. I don't understand. You will, soon. Beatriz sipped her coffee, then placed the cup gently back on the saucer. Before you judge my calmness, there's something you must know. Camila leaned back, puzzled. Her mother had always been secretive. Since childhood, she knew there were subjects never to be asked about. Her father, the past, the family. Beatriz had lived a quiet, elegant life, as though her former self had been erased from history. Beatriz rose and walked to the dining room cabinet, an old dark wood piece Camila remembered since childhood. She opened the lower drawer and took out a wooden box with a lock. Placing it on the table, she studied it for a few seconds before removing a small key she wore around her neck. For many years, she said while unlocking it, I pretended to be someone I wasn't. I did it to protect you. Camila leaned forward curiously. Inside, instead of recipes or kitchen utensils as she expected, there were old photographs, magazine clippings, framed certificates, and a small golden trophy. Beatriz picked up the first photo. In it, a young woman in an elegant dress and styled hair smiled before a large banner that read, National Award of Haute Cuisine, 1998.
Is that you?
Camila asked in disbelief. Beatriz nodded. Yes, back then, they called me the Lady of Fire. I owned a restaurant in Madrid, one the critics considered the heart of Spanish gastronomy. It was called Círculo Imperial. Camila was speechless. But, you always said you were a cooking teacher. I was, but before that, I was something greater.
Beatriz
Unfolded a newspaper clipping across the table. The headline read, Andrés Duarte, the chef who revolutionized Iberian cuisine. The pictures showed her at galas, award ceremonies, standing beside politicians and foreign chefs. "Your father and I built that empire together," she continued, her voice softer now. "We were young, ambitious, and full of dreams, but success has a price, Camila, a price that almost destroyed me." She paused for a moment, staring at a photograph of a kind-eyed man with a sad smile. "Your father was an artist. He had a natural gift for cooking, but he couldn't live in my shadow. When Circolo Imperial grew, he began to feel small. I tried to make him part of it, to share the spotlight, but the press only talked about me. Every article that praised me cut him a little deeper. Camila felt her throat tighten. "Is that why you lost him?" Beatriz nodded slowly. "Yes, one day he simply left. He left a letter behind. He said he couldn't love me and hate me at the same time." Silence filled the room. Then Beatriz inhaled deeply. "After that, I decided to vanish from the business world. I sold my shares, erased my name from every company, and started a new life with you." No one knew who Beatriz Duarte truly was. A cooking teacher in a small neighborhood school doesn't attract much attention. Camila stared at her, unsure of what to say. For the first time she saw not only elegance in her mother, but power. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to grow up under the shadow of wealth or power. And even less, for a man to seek you because of them. I wanted you to love for love's sake, not convenience." Camila pressed her lips together, absorbing every word. "But Mom, Andrés."
Exactly.
Beatriz interrupted gently. "Andrés is the kind of man I always feared would appear in your life. And yet he did." Beatriz took another envelope from the box and slid it toward her daughter. "This also belongs to you." Camila opened it. Inside were legal papers, contracts, plans, deeds. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "The donation contract of the house I gave you as a wedding gift." Camila flipped through the pages. Everything seemed ordinary until she found a clause highlighted in blue ink. Clause 3.2. Contract validity, she read aloud. "The ownership of the property shall remain valid only while the spouses maintain a legal marital bond. Upon dissolution, the property shall automatically revert to the original donor." Camila lifted her gaze, stunned. "What does this mean, Mom?" Beatriz smiled with that calmness that was now starting to feel almost unsettling. "It means, my dear daughter, that Andrés owns nothing, not even the walls of that house he boasts about." Camila was speechless. "But he has the documents, the deeds." "Everything he signed with you was secondary," Beatriz replied, folding her hands neatly. "His power was born from that contract. And that contract has a legal root he never even imagined. When you got married, I had that document written by a trusted law firm. I never truly gave you the house. I loaned it to you under the condition of love. As long as that love lived, it was yours. But if he betrayed you, the house would return to me." Camila felt the air leave her lungs. "You planned all this," she whispered. Beatriz looked at her steadily. "I didn't plan it, I foresaw it. Life taught me that promises of love don't always survive greed. I wanted to give you freedom, but also protection." She walked toward the window, gently moving the curtain aside. The midday light fell across her face. "When Andrés asked for that house, I knew the game had begun, but I had to let him act. A trap doesn't work unless the mouse walks into it willingly." Camila didn't know whether to feel relieved or frightened. For the first time she realized her mother was not just strong, she was a strategist. "So," she whispered, barely breathing, "what happens now?" Beatriz sat back down, her expression blending tenderness and command, the kind only powerful mothers possess. "Now, my daughter, we let destiny do its work. He believes he has won, but in truth, he has already lost everything." Silence filled the room again. Camila looked down at the papers in her hands, slowly grasping the magnitude of what she had just learned. Beatriz leaned closer, her eyes gleaming with quiet determination. "That house was never his, Camila," she said slowly, each word heavy with meaning. "It was only borrowed while he loved you." And in that moment, Camila understood that her mother was not merely an elegant woman, she was a sleeping queen, one who had just awakened. Dawn arrived with a different air. Camila awoke with her mind full of thoughts, but for the first time in days without tears. She had spent the night replaying her mother's words in her head. That house was never his. It was only borrowed while he loved you. That phrase had burned itself into her memory. It was the beginning of something new, though she didn't yet understand what. Beatriz was waiting in the dining room, impeccable as always, holding a cup of tea between her hands. "Today begins a new stage, daughter," she said calmly. "If you are going to face a man like Andrés, you cannot do it from pain, you must do it from intelligence." Camila sat across from her. "And how does one face someone like that?" she asked, her voice tired though her eyes already shone with a different light. "With strategy, not anger," Beatriz replied, "and with the right people." Beatriz picked up the landline phone, dialed a number she seemed to know by heart, and waited in silence. "Alina, it accepts me," she said finally. "I need to see you." The meeting was set for that same afternoon. Elena Robledo was a lawyer with a cold gaze and a discreet smile. She had been Beatriz's legal partner during the Circulo Imperial years, and one of the few who knew her true identity. Her reputation in the legal world was impeccable, but what truly set her apart was her loyalty. The meeting took place in a quiet house on the outskirts, far from the city's noise. Camila watched from the sofa as her mother and Elena greeted each other with a brief, respectful embrace. "It's been years since you called me, Bea," Elena said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "When I heard about your retirement, I thought I said never see you back in action." Beatriz smiled faintly. "Life always gives an encore," she replied, "and this one promises to be memorable." Camila looked at them, not fully understanding. "May I know what you're planning?" she asked finally. Beatriz crossed her legs elegantly. "We're going to take back what fits ours, daughter, but not just the house. We're going to recover your name, your power, and your voice." Elena spread a thick folder on the table filled with documents and photographs. "Your mother told me everything," she said, looking at Camila. "I reviewed the contracts, and indeed, Clause 3.2 invalidates any later transfer. Legally, the property never stopped belonging to Beatriz, but Andrés altered the documents with forged signatures, which is a crime." A chill ran through Camila. "Then we can report him." "We could," Beatriz interrupted, "but that would be too easy. Andrés is a proud man. Punishing him in court would make him look like a victim. No, daughter, his punishment will be public, elegant, and humiliating." Elena smiled slightly. "Just like the old days, huh, Bea?" "Exactly," Beatriz replied, "and for that we shall need the perfect stage." Beatriz opened another folder and turned it toward Camila. The cover read Banquete Real. "Rezzo's one of my covert companies," she explained, "luxury catering services. We work for politicians, actors, and businessmen. No one knows it's part of the old Circulo Imperial." "And what does that have to do with Andrés?" Camila asked. "Everything," Beatriz replied, "because Banquet Real will be the company catering his wedding." Elena let out a soft laugh. "My God, Bea, you haven't lost your touch." Beatriz ignored the comment with poise. "He'll put in my hands the most important event of his life, and he has no idea he's signing his own downfall." Camila stared at her, shocked. "You're planning to sabotage his wedding." "Don't call it sabotage, call it poetic justice," Beatriz said with an almost theatrical calm. "I don't seek to destroy him, daughter. I just want the world to see his true face. I want his mask to fall without me even touching it." Camila was silent for a moment. Something inside her resisted, but another part, the one that had been humiliated, began to awaken. "What do I have to do?" she asked finally. Beatriz smiled. "Transform yourself." From that day on, Camila's routine changed completely. Beatriz took her to a small wellness retreat on the outskirts, a private place frequented only by women of high profile. There she began a training that aimed not only to strengthen her body but also her mind. She practiced yoga at dawn, meditated in the afternoons, and took nightly walks with her mother. Beatriz never spoke of revenge, she spoke of rebirth. "It's not about striking back," she said as she watched her breathe. "It's about rising so high that the blow can no longer reach you." Camila began to care for her skin again, to look at her reflection without guilt, to rediscover her sensuality. She started dressing elegantly, not to please anyone, but to remind herself who she was. Her hair regained its shine, her eyes their spark. In the afternoons, Beatriz made her practice in front of the mirror. "Walk with your head held high, daughter. Sadness bends you, dignity straightens you." At first Camila laughed, but over the days her body began to follow that new energy. Her movements grew assured, her voice firmer. She was no longer the woman who cried on the floor. Now every step was a silent declaration. At night, mother and daughter sat by the fireplace with cups of red wine. They spoke little. They simply watched the fire burn, as if something invisible was being cooked within it. "You know, Mom," Camila said one night. "When he looked at me, I felt smaller." "That happens when you confuse love with validation," Beatriz replied. "Real love doesn't confine you, it expands you." Days passed and the wedding preparations began to flood social media. Andrés and Lucia appeared in smiling photos, posing at Hacienda El Horizonte. Each image was a reminder of Camila's humiliation, but strangely, it no longer hurt the same way. She now watched with distance, almost pity. Beatriz, meanwhile, kept track of every detail. She had succeeded in getting Banquete Rel chosen for the catering. The entire contract was signed without suspicion, and Andrés believed he had secured a great deal. "He thinks he's smarter than he is," Beatriz said, reviewing the paperwork. "He signed without reading the fine print, as always." Elena managed the legal side, preparing everything that would unfold right after the event. "When the wedding ends, everything returns to your name, Bea. He'll be left without a house, without a company, and without a reputation," she said over the phone. "And without a soul," Beatriz replied softly. "But that part isn't my responsibility." Camila listened in silence. Part of her still wondered if what they were doing was right. But Beatriz took her hand and spoke tenderly. "You once just regain your dignity, daughter," she said. "You shall become the queen of your own story." Those words brought her breath back. For the first time, Camila felt her life no longer revolved around the past. The night before the wedding, Beatriz took her up to the attic. From there they could see the illuminated estate in the distance. The lights looked like fallen stars scattered across the fields. Laughter, music, and movement echoed faintly in the air. Camila watched in silence. "I never imagined being on the other side of all this," she said quietly. "That's the beauty of second chances," her mother replied. "They force you to look down from the place that once blinded you from below." Beatriz rested her hands on the railing, her calm bordering on coldness. "Tomorrow the world will applaud a wedding, but in truth it will witness a lesson." Camila turned toward her. "A lesson?" Beatriz smiled, that enigmatic smile that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. "Yes, daughter, a lesson on how life always collects the debts we leave unpaid." The wind blew strong, stirring the curtains. Beatriz gently squeezed her daughter's arm. "Rest, Camila. Tomorrow, the show begins." And as they both gazed at the distant estate, its lights flickering like stars about to fall, Beatriz whispered almost to herself, with a serene yet chilling calm, "The show is about to begin." The day rose radiant beneath a sky so clear it seemed staged for a show. From early morning, luxury cars arrived one after another at Hacienda El Horizonte. Television cameras set up at the main gate. Drones skimmed the air, capturing every angle, and a swarm of reporters crowded behind barriers hunting the best shot of what the media already called the wedding of the year. Andrés Salvatierra strode through the corridors of the estate in a tailored dark blue suit, his gaze lofty and his smile as rehearsed as his remarks for the press. At his side walked Luciana Vega, wrapped in a striking white gown trimmed with silver, basking in every flash. Luciana lived for appearances. Every step and gesture had been calculated to gain more followers. This wedding was not an act of love, but of spectacle. Guests arrived in designer outfits and expensive perfumes, wearing airs of superiority. There were politicians, entrepreneurs, models, and celebrities. They all pretended friendship with the couple, though most were there for interest or curiosity. The garden lay under a white carpet surrounded by flowered arches that swayed in the breeze. A chamber orchestra played classical music while champagne was poured. The atmosphere overflowed with luxury and false happiness. No one noticed that among the waiters moved a team of perfectly synchronized professionals. They were staff from Banquete Real, dressed in immaculate uniforms with serene faces and measured movements. None looked at guests longer than necessary. Among themselves, each gesture carried a code. From a distance, Beatriz watched everything from a black van parked among the trees. She wore a sober dress and dark glasses. Beside her, Elena Robledo checked her phone and the service orders. Elena said in a steady voice that everything was ready and that the first course would be served at 6. Beatriz nodded without taking her eyes off the crowd and said that the show should begin. The ceremony started on time. Luciana walked to the altar with theatrical poise, savoring the admiring murmur of the guests. Andrés waited with a triumphant expression as if conquering the world. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, applause burst like fireworks. The press captured the kiss, the drones circled, and Luciana raised her bouquet as if crowning a victory. Everything seemed perfect, but the real feast, the one no one imagined, was only beginning. By late afternoon, the guests moved to the great hall. Tables glittered with golden candelabras and orchids. A gentle fragrance of vanilla and red wine drifted in the air. The music brightened, and photographers hunted every detail. The waiters began to serve the first course. Trays glided with elegance among the tables, and for a moment everything followed the script of a dream wedding, whole. Then a diner lifted the silver cover and froze. "What is this?" he asked in a startled voice. "Whole." Confusion spread like a rumor. Guests peered at their plates expecting lobster salmon or some other gourmet showpiece. Instead there were lentils, chorizo, and rustic bread. In place of dainty auteur portions there was home-style food steaming and abundant. "This must be a joke," said a woman with a grimace. "This is not what I ordered." Glances crossed the room. Someone laughed nervously. Another murmured about a logistics error. Yet the waiters continued serving with calm as if everything had been precisely planned. Luciana was the first to lose her composure. She called Andrés as she rose from her seat and demanded to know what was happening and where the menu they had chosen had gone. Andrés stood visibly uncomfortable, told her to stay calm, and hurried to the kitchen with a tense face. Inside he found the Banquete Real team working with serenity. Pot-simmered plates stacked high, and the aroma of cocido madrileno filled the air. "What on earth is going on?" he shouted. "I demand to speak with the director of catering." A service chief nodded and vanished for a moment. The door opened and a poised woman entered, her dark hair in a neat bun and a flawless black suit. She walked toward him with steady steps, a folder in hand. She introduced herself as Elena Robledo, director of Banquete Real, and asked how she could help. Andrés glared with fury. "Help," he snapped. "Look at what you are serving out there. This is a humiliation. I paid for a gourmet menu for seafood, for caviar, not for this disaster of street food." Elena opened her folder calmly. "There is no mistake," she said. "Everything was approved with your signature. Here is the contract with the changes you yourself authorized 3 days ago." Andrés went cold. "That is impossible," he said. "I signed nothing." "Perhaps you should review more closely the documents you delegate to your assistant," Elena replied with a barely visible smile. "Everything was processed by Miss Luciana Vega." Andrés felt a knot in his throat. He asked if Luciana had signed. Elena confirmed it and explained that according to the document, Luciana had requested a menu inspired by traditional Spanish roots and had asked for a banquet representing the food of the people. Rage overtook him. He called it a plot and demanded to speak with the owner of Banquete Real. Elena held his gaze without blinking and said she did not think that was necessary, but if he insisted she could call her, though she warned that the owner already knew him. Before he could answer, a murmur spread through the hall. Some guests began laughing openly. Cameras captured the chaos. Flushed with anger, Luciana tried to keep her poise, but the humiliation was plain. She begged Andrés to do something, and said they were being ridiculed. He snapped at her to be quiet and shouted that this could not be happening. At that moment, Elena lifted her eyes toward the main entrance. Her expression changed, and she said it seemed someone else had something to say. The murmurs intensified. Photographers swung their cameras. The air tightened. The door opened slowly, and a woman crossed the threshold. The click of heels echoed over the marble, marking a sure, almost defiant rhythm. Evening light streamed through the tall windows, bathing her in a golden glow. She wore a long red silk dress that embraced her figure with elegant precision. Her hair fell in loose waves, and her lips matched the shade of her gown. Luciana recognized her at once and whispered in disbelief. Andrés felt the world stop and his face twisted when he saw her. Camila walked to the center of the hall with a calm that commanded respect. The murmurs fell into silence. Everyone watched, some with curiosity, others with admiration. She stopped before Andrés and looked straight into his eyes. Her voice was firm, serene, and cutting as she asked what was wrong and whether he did not like his own menu. Silence grew so deep, the heartbeat of the room seemed audible. Camera flashes erupted again and again. In a single instant, the man who believed himself invincible stood before the mirror of his own shame. As Camila held his gaze without blinking, Beatriz smiled from afar. The act had begun. The silence in the hall was so dense it could almost be touched. No one moved. No one breathed. The flashes from the cameras blinked once, twice, until the photographers realized what they were witnessing was not just a social scandal, it was history in the making. Camila Duarte stood in the center of the room, unwavering, her eyes fixed on Andrés Salvatierra. Her red dress gleamed beneath the lights, Her posture was flawless, her presence commanding. There was no anger on her face, only a powerful calm that carried more weight than any scream. Luciana was the first to break the silence. "What is this woman doing here?" she shrieked hysterically. "Get her out right now." Camila turned to her with a faint smile. "Relax, Luciana. I didn't come to ruin your wedding. I came to show you who the man you married really is." A murmur rippled through the room. Guests began recording on their phones, aware they were witnessing a moment worth more than any speech. Andrés tried to recover his composure. "Camila, you're embarrassing yourself."
You don't belong here.
She stared at him steadily. "On the contrary, Andrés, this house, this land, this estate, everything you're using as the stage for your circus belongs to me." He laughed incredulously. "Please don't start your delusions. Legally, it sets all in my name." "Legally," Camila repeated, taking a step closer. Such a dangerous word for a man who never reads what he signs. Contained laughter rippled through the guests. Andrés felt heat crawl up his neck. "I don't know what you're trying to do," he hissed, "but I won't let you ruin this day." Suddenly, the side door of the hall opened. All heads turned. Beatriz Duarte entered, accompanied by Elena Robledo and two assistants dressed in black. She walked slowly but with absolute confidence, holding a thick folder under her arm. Her elegance commanded respect. She didn't need to raise her voice to seize control of the room. Andrés stepped back, startled. "And now what is this?" Beatriz stopped in front of him. "Good evening, Mr. Salvatierra. Allow me to formally introduce myself. I am Beatriz Duarte, Camila's mother, and the rightful owner of the property on which you stand." Gasps filled the hall. Cameras flashed wildly. Luciana tried to interrupt, but Beatriz raised a hand, her voice cutting through the noise with precision. "Courtesy dictates that a lady doesn't interrupt another when she sits speaking." Luciana fell silent, red with fury. Elena opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "Here are the original deeds for the house and the land," she said. "According to Clause 3.2 of the donation contract, the property could only remain in the couple's possession while their marriage bond was valid. Upon dissolution due to adultery, ownership automatically reverts to the donor, Mrs. Duarte." Andrés stared at her, stunned. "That can be. That's insane." Elena met his gaze coolly. "No, Mr. Salvatierra. It sets the law, and you yourself signed the acceptance papers. I have copies with your signature." The hall erupted in murmurs. Journalists began scribbling notes, alert and eager. Some guests couldn't suppress their laughter. Others simply watched, fascinated by the collapse of such an elaborate illusion. Luciana clung to Andrés' arm. "Tell them it's not true, love. Tell them this is a lie." He shook her off harshly. "Shut up, Luciana." Camila crossed her arms, watching the scene with a mix of serenity and compassion. "I told you, Andrés. I didn't come to destroy you. I came so you could see yourself without the mask." Beatriz took a step forward and grabbed the microphone from the master of ceremonies. "If you so allow me," she said firmly, "I like to take this opportunity, since we have cameras, press and such distinguished witnesses, to make an important announcement." The room fell silent once more. Everyone waited for her words. "For years my name remained in silence. I was the founder of a company called Circulo Imperial, a space dedicated to the art of fine cuisine and excellence in service. Many believed I had disappeared, but I was only waiting for the right moment to rise again. And tonight, in front of all of you, I announce a new project, JORGE'S Imperial." Guests exchanged intrigued glances. Beatriz continued in a solemn tone. "JORGE'S Imperiales will be more than a restaurant. It will be a cultural center, a culinary school, and a tribute to our heritage. A place where luxury is not measured by money, but by authenticity." Camila felt her chest swell with pride. Her mother wasn't just reclaiming what was hers. She was turning humiliation into art. Beatriz smiled faintly and looked at the audience. "And I am proud to announce that its creative director will be my daughter, Camila Duarte, a woman who, despite betrayal and loss, never stopped believing in beauty." Applause began timidly, then grew until it filled the hall. Cameras turned to Camila, who met her mother's gaze with gratitude. Andrés tried to regain control. "This is a farce," he shouted, his voice trembling. "This whole thing is staged." Beatriz turned toward him slowly. "Of course it is, Andrés. a staged act of justice, and you, my dear, are the unwilling protagonist. Luciana, seeing the cameras aimed at her tear-streaked face, broke down crying and ran from the hall, tripping on her gown. Guests barely stifled their laughter. The flashes followed her to the door, her image forever etched as a symbol of disgrace. Andrés stood alone, pale, lost. The press swarmed him with questions, but he didn't answer. He tore off his tie in frustration and shoved a cameraman. The elegant businessman mask crumbled completely before everyone's eyes. Beatriz walked to Camila, took her hand, and together they stepped to the center of the room. The past is closed, Beatriz whispered. Now it's up to your turn to write what comes next. Camila inhaled deeply, letting the sound of applause surround her. Every gaze that once pitied her now admired her. She felt alive, powerful, free. Beatriz lifted the microphone again. Thank you all for being here, she said with serene authority. This celebration may have turned out differently, but the most valuable lessons always do. Let this remind you, nothing built on lies lasts long. Love and dignity, however, are eternal. Applause grew louder. The musicians, hesitant at first, began playing a soft melody. The tense air transformed into a warm, glowing atmosphere. Beatriz and Camila walked together toward the exit. Outside, the sky was painted in shades of violet and gold. The lights of the estate shimmered on the wet grass. Mother and daughter paused for a moment, gazing at the horizon. Camila squeezed her mother Sep's hand. Thank you, Mom, for everything. Beatriz looked at her tenderly. Don'ts thank me. Thank the woman you chose to become. In the distance, cameras were still recording, but it no longer mattered. The only real thing was the feeling of freedom they now shared. Beatriz leaned close to her daughter and whispered softly, as if sharing an eternal secret. Now, Camila, the stage is yours. And as they walked beneath the final applause of the night, mother and daughter left behind the ruins of deceit and stepped together into a new beginning. A year had passed since that night that changed so many lives. The scandal of the wedding of Andrés Salvatierra and Luciana Vega still floated in the public memory like a modern legend. The media had named it the wedding of the century that ended in justice. For weeks, news shows, tabloids, and social networks spoke of nothing else. But while the noise slowly faded, something far more meaningful began to bloom. The old Hacienda El Horizonte no longer existed. In its place rose a space that blended elegance, history, and purpose. The wrought iron sign at the entrance read Raíces Imperiales, and beneath it in golden letters, Gastronomic Foundation and School for Women Entrepreneurs. Every corner of the estate had been restored by women's hands. The walls preserved the stately air of the hacienda but carried a modern, welcoming warmth. In the garden where the false wedding had once taken place, there were now traditional cooking workshops, art fairs, and talks on leadership. Laughter, aromas, and music filled the air. Everything had been reborn with a new, clean, powerful energy. Camila Duarte walked through the corridors with the serenity of someone who had learned to stand at her own center. She wore white, her hair loose, and her smile calm. As she passed, the students greeted her with respect and admiration. Many had come seeking what she had once lost, self-worth. Together with her mother, she had created a space where women could learn, grow, and heal. Beatriz led the culinary side, teaching classes on culinary history and business management. Camila directed the workshops on design, personal branding, and empowerment. Together they had turned ruin into seed. One afternoon, as she walked through the greenhouse, Camila received a visit from Elena Robledo. The lawyer smiled, more relaxed than usual. I never imagined seeing this place like this, she said, admiring the flowers and the glass windows. You've worked a miracle, Camila. It wasn't said a miracle, Camila replied, pouring 2 cups of tea. It was work, love, and a little fire. Elena laughed. And your mother?
In the kitchen, as always. She sets teaching a group of girls how to make patella. Says cooking is a form of meditation.
It is, Elena sighed. And you, how do you feel now that all of this is real? Camila looked her in the eyes. At peace. Finally at peace. From the window, the golden fields of the afternoon stretched endlessly. The air smelled of fresh bread and herbs. Everything that once hurt had turned into beauty. Andrés Salvatierra, on the other hand, no longer smiled for cameras. He had lost his company, his properties, and his reputation. His partners abandoned him after the scandal, and his debts multiplied. No one wanted to be associated with a man who had deceived his wife and flaunted a fortune that was never his. Now he worked behind the counter of a small bar downtown. He washed glasses, poured drinks, and listened to other people's conversations without joining in. His tailored suit had been replaced by a worn shirt and a stained apron. Occasionally, a customer recognized him and whispered his name mockingly. He pretended not to hear. One night, while cleaning a table, the bar's television aired a report about races imperialis. The camera focused on Camila giving a speech, radiant, confident, surrounded by women applauding her. Andrés froze, cloth in hand, staring in silence. "What an irony," said the bar owner with a chuckle. "That woman became famous after what she did to you." Andrés didn't answer. He kept watching the screen, a mix of nostalgia and shame in his eyes. Deep down, he knew she hadn't done anything to him. He had done it all to himself. Luciana Vega, meanwhile, had vanished from the public eye. Her social media accounts were empty. Some said she'd moved abroad. Others claimed she was teaching yoga under a different name. The truth was, after the scandal, no brand wanted to work with her again. Her influencer career had died the same night her wedding dress was stained with humiliation. The first anniversary of Races Imperiales was celebrated with a grand outdoor dinner. Long wooden tables, string lights, and live music. The students cooked the dishes, the guests toasted with wine, and Beatriz walked among them with open pride. Camila stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone. "A year ago, this place was a symbol of betrayal," she began. "Today it's a symbol of rebirth. What was pain became purpose. What was loss became strength. What was silence became voice." The audience listened in rapt attention. "Sometimes life brings you to your knees," she continued.
You think it's the end.
"But if you have the courage to look within, you'll see that ruins can bloom. Self-love, wisdom, and faith in yourself are the true wealth. No one can take them from you, not even those who tried to destroy you. Witchiumaner Minus and your bows who tried to destroy you." Beatriz applauded from one of the tables, tears glistening in her eyes. She had raised a woman who not only survived but learned to soar. Camila lifted her glass and smiled. "And I want to dedicate this project to all the women who ever felt small, broken, or not enough. You weren't set, you were simply paused, waiting for your rebirth." The applause was long, deep, sincere. Later that night, when everyone had left and the lights were out, Camila and Beatriz remained alone in the garden. The moon shone over the treetops. "Mom," Camila said softly, "did you ever think we set to make it here?" "I always knew," Beatriz replied. "You just needed to lose everything to find yourself." Camila breathed deeply and looked at the sky. "You know what I've learned from all this? Tell me. Never underestimate a woman who's been hurt. Her silence isn't surrender. It's the prelude to her victory." Beatriz smiled proudly. That phrase deserves to be carved at the entrance of Races Imperialis. Camila hugged her. The breeze carried the scent of rosemary and freshly baked bread. The night held a peace that only comes when the soul is in order. And now, as the images of that story linger in the mind of the listener, Camila's voice turns to reflection. If someone ever broke your heart, if anyone ever made you feel less, remember, no wound is too deep to become strength. No fall too heavy to become momentum. Self-love, dignity, and wisdom are treasures no one can steal. A soft melody echoes as the camera pulls back, showing the illuminated facade of Races Imperialis, filled with women laughing and working together. The closing narration grows intimate, warm. Thank you for joining me in this story. If you ever felt like Camila, if you ever risen from your ashes or about to share your story in the comments, this channel is a refuge for brave souls. Subscribe, share, and remember, always believe in yourself. Never underestimate a woman who has been hurt because her silence is often the prelude to her victory.